last 12 years I've been thinking about art and the community of artists, writers, composers, and this is a wonderful opportunity to meet and engage with two wonderful artists, Bette Mifsud and Jaros. It's a spectacularly beautiful exhibition that, no, spectacular is the wrong word. It's an inward exhibition. It makes you feel incredibly inward, makes you look deep into yourself. And that is what I love about art, is the artist is someone who has to somehow make sense of the world and create a new language for it. And this is what both artists have done. I'll start with Ida's fantastic work, which is taking something very normal. We've all been on commuter trains and we've all seen things fly past. If you go in there with a camera and you photograph things going past when you're the one that's going, and everything is in movement, everything changes. The shadows, the movements, the reflections, everything becomes a seething drama, so that this everyday act becomes chaos. The first thing I thought when I saw this exhibition is it reminded me of something. And I thought, what does it remind me of? And it reminds me of Van Gogh's great painting, The Starry Night. Or, more truthfully, it reminds me of the wonderful poem that the American poet W.D. Snodgrass, who sounds like he ought to have been a solicitor, wrote about the Starry Night. And the first lines of the poem are, "Only the small town remains. Against all shock and dazzle, only this little still stands calm." And that really stayed in my mind, because the Starry Night is about chaos. It's about an artist holding the immense chaotic universe within and without together. And that is what an artist does. But what I really noticed about Ida's work was, in all this chaos, there are wonderful moments of stillness. You will see there is a person standing there texting. You will see this person, they come twice in it. And the absolute stillness of this person. We've seen this person 1,000,001 times standing there texting. In this person becomes a symbol of stillness. The stillness that's at the center of creativity and is always threatened by enormous chaos. So it was a wonderful moment for me to sort of think that all these connections were happening in my mind, and the older you get, and I'm getting quite old now, you have more connections to make with the world. And this was a wonderful thing to see. That still point takes me to Bette's work, which is all about stillness. And what I thought of with the connection I made immediately with Bette's work was those languages that have words for emotions we can't, they can't be translated. The Portuguese have the word saudade, and the Czechs have a word litost. They both are untranslatable, but they are a combination of grief, sympathy, yearning, the whole sadness, sorrow, experience, everything coming together in this one word. And for me, Bette has created a language to express the sorrow of self in the world, the sorrow of the world. And there are some stunning images here. They're not stunning in the sense that they knock you over the head, but their inwardness is stunning. There's one I'm looking at just here. When I first saw it, I thought, what is that animal? And I thought, is it a moose with incredibly overgrown antlers, who is so miserable in the world, but is still enduring somehow? It's in fact a tree, but for me, that is a wonderful symbol. There's another magical moment if you look at the video, and you'll need to come on a quiet time and look at the video and look at it a few times, because it absolutely creates its own world around you. And what Bette does in this one, there's two wonderful images that succeed each other. One has sheep in it, in the fog and the mist, and then the video seems to sweep the sheep away. There's only the lamb. And it's wonderful bare land. For me, it evokes very much the New England landscape I grew up in, the rocks, the cleared country, the dead trees, the pine forests, the rocks, the boulders. It's just this is country that I know very well. It's country that isn't the way this country should be, and that the sadness of that is something that I think we all feel, and this wonderful work expresses. It has, as I have, a great consciousness of the background, the European background that so many of us come from. And I thought I'd like to bring our artists in here by talking a little bit about that background. Bette comes to us from Maltese background. So could you tell us something about what it means to be a Maltese person growing up in Australia?
Can you hear me? Oh, you can. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming. If I don't get around to talking, or we don't get around to talking to everybody, thank you. Very much appreciate you being here. What's it like to be a Maltese person? Well, the interesting thing is, you're kind of not. You're a hybrid. You know, you're a hybrid of two cultures when you're born, two migrant parents. In my case, post-war, quite traumatised migrant parents, and I'm sure a number of people in the room are familiar with that. And what else can I say? So yeah, you're a hybrid person. You speak. I was speaking. English is actually my second language, not my first one. So you're speaking two languages. You're traversing two cultures constantly. And for me, in the era that I grew up in, and of course racism is alive and well, unfortunately, in this country, but when I was a kid, migrants like us were a minority, and you really stood out at school, and you got picked on a lot, and sometimes quite violently, and so you had to protect yourself from that. But yes, so as a kid, I felt I didn't belong to this landscape. I didn't belong to the kind of Australian bush landscape, but I also didn't belong to Malta either. And so for a long time, you think, well, where do I belong? And I thought, as a kid, given that I worked market gardens for the first 25 years of my life, I must belong to this landscape, but this landscape's broken. That's what was apparent to me growing up, if this is the kind of landscape I grew up in. And I used to also wonder what happened to the Aboriginal people who were here. Where did they go? Because we weren't taught that history at school either. So yeah, basically to sum things up, that's what it was like briefly to be Maltese hybrid, and that's where a lot of this work comes from.
And Hayley, you come from the Czech Republic, and I use the word litost. She told me how to pronounce. And there is a specific, in looking at your work, I feel a strong affinity with Czech writers who I love, like Hobal and the Good Shoulder Schweik. Can you tell us something about how being Czech influences your work?
Oh. I don't like these things. Well, being Czech, I was 7 when we arrived in Australia. The first 6 months of being to Billerwood Immigration Centre. There were no barbed wires back then. We were free to come and go. I think my earliest memories were associated with fairy tales, Czech fairy tales. So they are very dark, very violent, and I haven't been able to sort of extract myself from those images that were instilled in me from my very first days. So I carry them and continue to carry them, and I continue to love them. So with the darkness, but I love the light as well. Anyway, the end.
There will be an artist talk by our 2 wonderful artists on the 15th of July, Saturday, and let me suggest that this is an exhibition that you assimilate into yourself. I've been looking at images from it for weeks and months, and now I feel it's part of me, which I feel is what is the best thing that can happen with art. Is it becomes a companion, it becomes something you can't think of your life without. So I would recommend paying several visits to this wonderful exhibition and absorbing its particular language, its particular imagery, which certainly can't be taken in one setting. It really does get into you. It is really an exhibition of the highest quality. I must also say that this is the first exhibition for the 10 years for both artists. It's a really significant moment in their life. These wonderful works bring together a lot of life and thought in a totally unique way. And the wonderful thing about art is that people can build up something that is entirely their own, comes from their own history and experience and their own thought, and present it to us, and we can feel entirely at home in it as if we made it ourselves. And this is a wonderful thing about art, and it's a wonderful exhibition. And I do thank you, Bette, for asking me to launch it. And I've now done my duty.
Thank you so much, Peter, for being here and giving us your time. I'd just like to say thank you to all the councillors present. As I know Susan Templeman is here, or was here this morning. Thank you so much for supporting the arts and being here for such an important seminal show. As Peter said, it's been about a decade, and you can see the strength of what's been mulling in their souls and brains for the last decade. But thank you so much everyone for coming. On July 15th, as Peter said, there will be an artist talk that delves further into the practice of Bette and Ida. So enjoy the rest of Winter Magic and Art Express. It's also across the way. And thank you so much for being here.